My name is John Thompson. I'm 103 years old. I was born on the 5th of May, 1921. When you live this long, the world you were born into feels like another planet. There were fewer than 2 billion people on Earth. No internet, no television. In most homes, horses still pulled carts in many streets. Life was slower, harder, and in some ways simpler. We did not talk about mental health. We did not talk much about feelings at all. We worked, we endured, we carried on. I began working at 14. That was normal. You did not ask yourself what your passion was. You asked where the next wage would come from. You did what was in front of you. There is dignity in that, I think, in doing what needs to be done. When the war came, I was 18. 18 is an age when you still believe you are indestructible. You have not yet learned how fragile a human body is, how easily a life can be erased. You have not yet understood how thin the layer of civilization really is. I joined the army. Like many young men, we stood upright, chins in, stomachs tight. We marched for miles with heavy packs. We believed in something larger than ourselves, though most of us could not have defined it clearly. Duty, country, brotherhood, words that sound grand when spoken far from gunfire. On Christmas Day, 1941, I was captured. Christmas Day, while people elsewhere were opening presents and sitting around tables, I was laying down my weapon. Hong Kong had fallen. We became prisoners. You may think of prison as a building with walls and bars. This was different. This was hunger. This was disease. This was watching strong men shrink into skeletons. This was lifting coal and pig iron until your muscles burned, not because you wanted strength, but because you were ordered to move or suffer the consequences. For 4 years, I lived with the constant threat of violence. You learn quickly what fear does to a man. It tightens him. It makes him smaller. It teaches him silence. If showing anger brings punishment, you bury anger. If showing sadness makes you vulnerable, you bury sadness. If showing hope makes disappointment unbearable, you bury hope. You bury everything. People speak about bravery. The Japanese soldiers were brave. Our soldiers were brave. But bravery does not cancel suffering. Bravery does not fill an empty stomach. Bravery does not stop dysentery from taking a 6-foot man and reducing him to a whisper. I saw men die who should have lived long, full lives. I saw futures disappear. And when you see enough of that, something changes inside you. You begin to understand that life is not guaranteed, not happiness, not love, not tomorrow morning. When I finally came out, I was 25, a young man technically, but something had been altered. I had gone in at 18 with emotions close to the surface. I came out with them locked away. That is one of the great lessons war forced upon me. Survival sometimes requires you to shut down parts of yourself that are meant to be open. In prison, showing emotion was dangerous. If you showed anger, you were punished. If you showed defiance, you were punished. If you showed weakness, you were punished. So you trained yourself to show nothing. You walked carefully. You spoke carefully. You felt carefully. And habits formed. In order to survive, do not disappear just because the war ends. When I married, I loved my wife in the way I could. We had 49 years together. We built a life. We laughed. We shared responsibilities. We endured the ordinary ups and downs of marriage. But I know looking back that there were parts of me she could never reach, not because she was lacking, because I was closed. She needed warmth expressed in words. She needed vulnerability. She needed the kind of emotional openness that says, this is how I feel. This is what I fear. This is what I need. And I struggled to give that, not because I did not care, but because somewhere deep inside, I had trained myself not to feel too deeply, not to reveal too much. That is the second lesson war and prison forced me to learn. What protects you in one season of life may wound you in another. The armor that keeps you alive on a battlefield is heavy in a living room. The silence that keeps you safe in a prison camp becomes distance at a dinner table. If I have regrets, they live there, not in the fact that I fought, not in the fact that I endured, but in the fact that survival reshaped me in ways I did not fully understand until much later. You may imagine that reaching 103 feels like a triumph. Sometimes it does. I do not use a stick. I still walk. I still travel. I still build small things with my hands. Activity keeps you alive. Muscles remember what they have been trained to do. Even now, I believe that physical labor in my youth, even in prison, strengthened me for the long years. But there are disadvantages to living this long. You outlive people you love. Friends disappear. Your wife goes before you. Your generation becomes a memory. You find yourself surrounded by a world that moves faster than you can process. Technology compounds upon technology. The young speak a language shaped by screens and signals. Sometimes I feel frustration. Why can I not do what I once did? Why does dressing take longer? Why must I rest after exertion? The mind remembers capability long after the body surrenders it. Birth, I once said, is a terminal illness. It sounds harsh, but it is simply a recognition that from the moment we are born, we are moving toward an end. The in-between is what matters. The stages, the choices, the small acts of kindness or cruelty, the ways we respond to suffering. War taught me how quickly life can be taken. Prison taught me how much a human being can endure. Old age has taught me how precious ordinary days are. There were moments in prison when humor saved us. Imagine that. Men starving, diseased, beaten by circumstance, still managing to smile, not because anything was funny in the usual sense, but because laughter was defiance. Laughter said, "You have not taken everything. Have a sense of humor." That may sound small compared to war and death, but it is not. The ability to see absurdity, even in hardship, keeps you from drowning in bitterness. Bitterness is easy. It grows naturally in wounded soil, but it poisons the one who carries it. I was never consumed by hatred toward the soldiers who guarded us. They were young men too. Many died in their millions. They had mothers. They had dreams. War turns individuals into uniforms. It reduces complexity into enemy and ally. But beneath that, there are human beings. If you learn nothing else from my life, learn this. Dehumanizing others makes cruelty easier, and cruelty spreads. After the First World War, millions were slaughtered. You would think humanity had learned, yet within decades we began another. We convinced ourselves that this time it was necessary, justified, unavoidable. Perhaps it was. I am not here to debate strategy. I am here to tell you that the cost is always higher than you imagine. Now the weapons are more powerful than anything we knew. A single decision by a powerful leader could end more lives in a day than entire campaigns once did in years. I used to feel optimistic about human progress. We invented, we improved medicine, we connected continents, we extended lifespans. But progress in tools does not guarantee progress in wisdom. That is the third lesson war and prison forced me to learn. Intelligence without character is dangerous. You can build machines that feed millions. You can also build machines that destroy millions. The question is not what we can do. It is who we choose to be. In prison, stripped of possessions, stripped of freedom, stripped of certainty. What remained? Character. The man beside you, sharing a crust of bread, the one who gave up his place in line for someone weaker, the one who offered a joke when despair was thick in the air. When everything external is taken, what is internal becomes visible. You may chase money. You may chase status. You may chase recognition. But none of those will sit beside you when you are starving. None of those will comfort you when fear grips your chest at night. What remains are relationships, integrity, and the quiet knowledge of how you have treated others. I lost a son to suicide. No war prepared me for that. No prison hardened me enough to absorb it without pain. If I could go back to my younger self, I would not give advice about career or ambition. I would say pay closer attention, listen more carefully, speak more openly. We imagine that strength means endurance, and sometimes it does, but sometimes strength means admitting confusion, admitting sorrow, admitting you need help. The generation I grew up in did not speak of such things. We endured silently. That silence can be deadly. So here is another lesson. Do not let pride prevent connection. If you are hurting, say so. If someone else is hurting, ask. Gently, without judgment. The mind is a mysterious organ. It can survive prison camps and still collapse in a quiet bedroom years later. At 103, I do not claim to have mastered life. I have simply observed it for longer than most. I have seen optimism rise and fall. I have seen nations rebuild from rubble. I have seen technology transform how we live, love, and communicate. I have also seen that human nature changes slowly. We are capable of extraordinary kindness and extraordinary cruelty. The difference often lies in small choices made repeatedly. Do you see the person in front of you as fully human or as an obstacle? Do you respond to disagreement with curiosity or contempt? War begins long before bullets fly. It begins in words, in divisions, in the quiet belief that they are less than us. If I sound cautious about the future, it is because I have seen how quickly stability can collapse. But I have also seen resilience, cities rebuilt, families formed, children laughing in places once scarred by bombs. So what is the lesson war and prison forced me to learn? It is this: life is fragile, but the human spirit is stubborn. Protect the spirit. Do not waste your years chasing trivial victories while neglecting the people who share your table. Do not assume you will have time later to say what matters. Later is not guaranteed. Stay active if you can. Move your body. Use your hands. Build something, even if it is small. Activity keeps despair at bay. Idleness invites it in. Cultivate humor, not mockery, not cruelty disguised as jokes, but genuine lightness, the ability to say, "This is difficult, and yet I will not let it define me." Guard your character more fiercely than your reputation. Reputation is what others think. Character is what remains when no one is watching. And understand that survival is not the same as living. I survived war. I survived prison. I survived the deaths of friends and the loss of youth. But living required something more. It required re-engaging with the world, taking interest, building furniture, painting, traveling, asking questions about how things work. Curiosity is life extending itself. Many people grow old long before they die because they stop being interested. They shrink their world to routines and complaints. Stay interested in science, in art, in the neighbor down the street, in the way light changes across a room during the day. When I say I am 103, people react with astonishment. But age alone is not an achievement. It is an accumulation of days. What matters is how those days are filled. I have had advantages. I avoided fatal accidents. I benefited from medical advances. Luck plays a role in every long life. Do not believe anyone who tells you they alone engineer their longevity. We are all subject to forces beyond our control. Which brings me to humility. War humbles you. Prison humbles you. Age humbles you. You realize how little control you truly have. You can influence. You can choose your responses. but you cannot command outcomes with certainty. So choose your responses wisely. If you respond to hardship with cruelty, you multiply suffering. If you respond with compassion, you interrupt it. Before I die, I do not wish to leave behind grand theories. I leave you this simple truth. The conditions of your life may not be your choice, but the quality of your character is shaped by thousands of small decisions. War forced me to decide daily whether I would become bitter or remain human. Prison forced me to decide whether I would close completely or leave some small window open inside. I closed more than I should have. That is my honest confession. And yet even then, some ember remained, enough to build a marriage, enough to raise children, enough to keep walking at 10:03. If you are young and listening, do not wait for catastrophe to clarify your values. Decide now who you intend to be, because when pressure comes, and it will, you will not rise to your aspirations. You will fall to your habits. Make kindness a habit. Make integrity a habit. Make curiosity a habit. And remember that the people you encounter, even those you oppose, are carrying unseen battles. I have seen what happens when we forget that. I do not know how much time I have left. At 1:03, every morning is a quiet gift. I wake, I move, I dress slowly, and I step into a world that is both familiar and entirely changed from the one of my childhood. If these are my final years, I accept them. I have loved living, despite everything, even with regret, even with loss, even with pain. Life is not a promise of comfort. It is an opportunity for meaning. War and prison stripped away illusions. They taught me that comfort can vanish overnight, that freedom is precious, that emotion once buried is hard to recover, that hatred corrodes the vessel that carries it. But they also taught me that humans can endure more than they imagine, that laughter can survive in the darkest places, that character shines brightest when circumstances are worst. So before I die, listen to this lesson. Do not wait for suffering to teach you what matters. Choose it now. Choose humanity. Choose connection. Choose to remain open, even when fear tells you to close. Because in the end, when strength fades and titles mean nothing, what remains is simple. How well did you love? How gently did you treat others? For how honestly did you live? Everything else is noise.